Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan El Rom.
In our top story, Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of the Likud party, has secured a parliamentary majority and is in the final stages of forming the new Israeli government. Israel's President Isaac Herzog has granted Netanyahu a 10-day extension to assign specific posts to be filled by the coalition partners. This new Knesset will be a stable bloc of mostly conservative and religious parties. Leftist politicians in Israel and America have criticized the shift in politics, but Netanyahu assured the public that this government will act to serve all of Israel's citizens.
Several members of the Jewish community in Iran have been arrested in a crackdown on the anti-regime protests that have rocked the hardline Shiite Muslim country. Today, there are less than 10,000 Jews in Iran, the remnant of an ancient community whose history dates back to biblical times. The books of Daniel, Ezra, and Nehemiah all reference the Jewish community of Persia, which is present-day Iran. Despite the hostility of the current rulers, Jews in the Islamic theocracy have worked to live in peace and to protect biblical holy sites, such as the tombs of Mordechai and Esther, which are located in the city of Hamadan. These arrests have shaken the Jewish community, which has tried to keep a very low profile during the recent unrest. And in a related development, the niece of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for speaking out against his murderous regime. Khamenei's sister echoed her daughter's sentiments, saying that the dictator should step down, and she expressed her solidarity with the protest. Violent crackdowns continue to rage throughout the country. Thousands of demonstrators have been arrested and beaten, and at least 2 have been publicly executed as the mullahs attempt to hold on to their power over the Iranian people.
49 members of the United States Congress are calling to defund the United Nations Commission of Inquiry on Israel. This bias panel was created by the UN Human Rights Council to investigate alleged Israeli human rights abuses. It operates on an agenda solely to persecute the Jewish state and does not consider other factors, such as Palestinian terrorism and the indoctrination to violence in Arab schools. In a letter penned to Linda Thomas Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, 49 members of Congress urged the United States to halt funding to the organization, saying the commission's distorted investigatory work has proven to be profoundly problematic. The letter said, "We urge the U.S. delegation to strongly advocate to restrict this bias commission's funding within the UN system and take steps to eliminate the commission completely."
The Hezbollah terror group is frantically attempting to conceal weapons shipments from Iran. It's believed the guerrilla army, which is funded and trained by Tehran, has been relocating their fighters and munitions to Syria from Lebanon, fearing that Israel will discover and destroy their advanced weapons stockpiles. Israel is said to be investigating reports that Iran has been smuggling weapons on civilian flights through the Beirut International Airport. An Arabic-language newspaper based out of London reported that Israel has warned Lebanese authorities that the airport could be targeted if it is being used to transfer munitions to the Lebanese terror group.
The IDF called up more than 5,000 reservists and 8,000 troops for a massive surprise drill on Israel's northern border. Operation Warm Winter 2 simulated a sudden outbreak of fighting on the northern frontier and aimed to enhance the combat readiness of the IDF frontline troops. It also focused on logistical support in various scenarios, including explosive events in the northern area. The IDF spokesman's office said that the exercise involved various units working in coordination.
Iran has reportedly halted funding to certain Palestinian terror groups. According to a story in the Al-Quds Arabic-language newspaper, several Palestinian factions are in financial crisis and are unable to pay their terror leaders. The report did not name the specific groups affected, but both Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad organizations have admitted that Iran was supplying them with military and financial aid. A source with the PIJ in Gaza recently told the Al Monitor news site that his terror faction was concerned that the protest in Iran would affect Tehran's continued support of his group's terror activities against Israel.
Israel has announced that it will be sending more humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. The aid package includes $1.2 million in surgical equipment as well as 20 powerful electric generators. Israel's defense ministry is expected to send 3 armored ambulances in addition to the one that has already been delivered to the Ukraine. An Israeli-run trauma center has been established in Kiev to treat children suffering from PTSD. Israel has been on the ground providing aid and assistance to Ukrainians since the outbreak of the war, and Caroline Glick has assisted thousands of refugees and has helped hundreds of Jews immigrate to Israel.
The Bloomberg Segal Center for City Leadership at Tel Aviv University has launched an exciting program for municipal officials. The course is designed to attract mayors from various Israeli populations to accurately represent all communities and to find ways to cooperate. The diverse nature of Israel is reflected in the makeup of the 20 representatives attending the course. There are Jews, Arabs, secular, religious, urban, and rural mayors. Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Segal family launched the Center for Israeli Leadership with the goal of strengthening local stewards across Israel. It was inspired by a similar program at Harvard University. Yossi Segal, chairman of Segal Holdings Corporation, said mayors serve as the first and most significant line of leadership for citizens, and they manage the most important matters for local residents. He added that he hopes the program will bring the best-in-class skills and advanced doctrines from the business world to the local authorities.
The Israeli Navy has successfully tested its long-range anti-cruise missile interceptor mounted on its newly equipped corvette ships. This system, which will be deployed in the Mediterranean Sea, is capable of destroying UAVs, cruise missiles, unguided rockets, and coast-to-sea missiles before they reach their intended targets. The Israel Defense Forces released a statement saying the system constitutes a significant layer in the air defense capabilities of the Navy in achieving naval superiority and its involvement in the IDF's aim of overcoming a variety of threats and scenarios from the sea and the coast.
Good news if you're planning a trip to the Holy Land. Israel has been named one of the safest tourist destinations in the world. You heard correctly. Despite the disproportionate media coverage of the Jewish state, Israel has been named among the top 5 safest places to visit. A report compiled by a U.S. insurance comparison website shows that Israel is the 5th safest country for travelers, just behind Switzerland, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Singapore. The study compiled reports on drugs and crime, the Travel Safety Index, which factors in homicides, road accidents, hygiene conditions, natural disasters, and more. Well, how did some of the other countries fare? The report noted that the United States ranked number 30 out of 50. Canada placed 21st, France was 15th, and the United Kingdom ranked 10th in the list of the safest countries to visit.
The White House has included a Jewish Hanukkah in its official holiday display for the first time. The presidential residence has held public Hanukkah candle lighting ceremonies for the Jewish holiday before, but this is the first time that the 9-branch candelabra has been featured in its official Christmas exhibit. In related news, Yeshiva University in New York City has announced that it will exhibit a hand-drawn image of the menorah from the Jewish temple, which was likely sketched by Rabbi Moses ben Maimon. Also known as Maimonides or the Rambam, Rabbi ben Maimon is considered to be one of the most prolific Jewish scholars of the Middle Ages.
In archaeology news, a 2,200-year-old Greek slingshot bullet has been discovered in northern Israel. The Antiquities Authority says the small engraved lead projectile may have been used by a Greek soldier in the war against the Hasmoneans. The weapon was discovered during excavations at the ancient palace of Yavne. This city was an ally of the ruling Seleucid Greek Empire in the 2nd century before the Common Era. The rare artifact was unearthed just days before the beginning of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, which commemorates the victory of the Hasmoneans over the mighty Greek armies. Rebecca has more on that story.
Yes, Yochanan, the Jewish people will begin to celebrate the Festival of Lights tonight. Hanukkah commemorates the miracle that God performed in Israel when the Greek Empire attempted to paganize the Jews by profaning the temple and outlawing Shabbat. Although greatly outnumbered, a group of faithful Jews led by the family of Judah Maccabi chose to fight for the freedom to worship the one true God. And in return, the Lord was faithful and made the small Jewish army victorious over the mighty Greek military. The Maccabees returned to the holy city of Jerusalem, cleansed the temple, and reinstituted Sabbath observance. Jews will light the first candle of the 8-day holiday Sunday night and remember that God's light will shine from Jerusalem forever. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. Our guest today is celebrated columnist and author Caroline Glick. Caroline, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So Caroline, I'm a huge fan. I read all your stuff. It seems that you get your information before everyone else. How is it sourcing these type of articles to go in depth on these different issues?
I don't know that people get it. I get it earlier. I think maybe I get it earlier in the sense that I've been following these stories for so long that you're able to sort of anticipate what's going to happen and also pay attention to the people who are making the news to understand things. So I don't know that I get a lot of scoops per se. I think it's more that it's just if you're analyzing the situation and you're basing everything that you say on reality as opposed to what some left-wing commentator just said yesterday afternoon, then you're likely to get the fundamentals right.
One of the issues and topics that you write about quite a bit is what's happening in Iran with the revolution. Why is it important to get that information out?
On the Iranian Revolution specifically, what I'm doing mainly is following the Iranians in their postings on Twitter and other social media platforms. And luckily we have automatic translations in Google Translate so that you can get a lot of information that otherwise you wouldn't have access to if we didn't have that kind of technological tool at our disposal. So when you watch exactly what the Iranians on the ground are doing, what they're saying, how they're responding now to the massive aggression that the regime is using against them, then you understand a couple of things. One, you understand that this isn't protests. This isn't about hijab laws and mandatory wearing of hijabs for every female over the age of 8. It's about fundamentally it's changing Iran. It's about overthrowing the Islamist regime. This is what we're seeing unfold today in Iran. It's not a protest about wages. It's not a protest about women's rights. It's a revolution. It's a revolution of the Iranian people writ large, the Persians, the ethnic Persians, the tradesmen, the students, the young, the old, the ethnic Azerbaijanis, the ethnic Baluchis, the ethnic Awaz Arabs, the ethnic Turkmen and Kurds, all of them rising up as one, not as Kurds, not as Azerbaijanis, etc., or Persians, but as Iranians, and they want to overthrow this regime and bring political freedom to the Iranian people writ large. And that's what we're watching.
Well, the next question really is, we have a situation where Iran is having a revolution. Mm-hmm. Iran is one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous state actors out there. They're trying to get nuclear weapons. Why isn't there more commentary from the West? Like, where is the Biden administration on this? Where is the EU on this? Why aren't they trying to help these people who just want their own freedom?
Where's NATO?
Where's NATO?
Unfortunately, the Biden administration, led by the most radical administration, that is the most radical administration we've ever seen. They essentially are on the side of the mullahs, of the ayatollahs. I mean, we had the Green Revolution in Iran in 2009 when the regime stole the presidential elections, and people, over 1 million Iranians, got out on the streets demanding either the overthrow of the regime or a true counting of the ballots, and they were violently put down. And the Obama administration tried to ignore the Green Revolution and pretend it away because already from the opening days of the Obama administration, and Barack Obama and his people were interested in appeasing the mullahs, appeasing the ayatollahs, and realigning the United States away from its traditional Middle Eastern allies, first and foremost Israel and the Sunni Arab states, and towards Iran and towards the Muslim Brotherhood. They were ignoring it, and the Biden administration as well. From the moment it came into office, even beforehand, it said that what it wants to do is reinstate Obama's policy of strategic appeasement and realignment towards Iran and away from Israel and the Sunnis. And they still are not willing to truly abandon that position, and they say we want them to reform. Nobody's calling for reform. The Iranians in the streets dying, giving up their lives for freedom for their countrymen, They want a new regime. They want to overthrow the mullahs. They're saying every day, death to the dictator, death to the IRGC. They're calling them terrorists, which they are.
Well, here's the million-dollar question, is which you brought up before. Where does this end? There's been a lot of revolutions in Iran. Is this one going to be successful, or is this going to be another footnote in the long, terrible theocracy of Iran?
I mean, I think what we've already seen is we've seen full units in the Iranian army just walking away and joining the revolutionaries. And I don't think it's going to be a question of can the revolutionaries get enough weapons and everything to bring down this regime. I think it's whether there are going to be enough people inside of the regime forces that are going to say, we don't want to kill our people anymore, and them walking away and joining them. And so I think that the Rubicon has been crossed as far as the revolutionaries are concerned. You see, they killed 35 people in one night, 350 people joined the revolution the next day. And as for world support, I mean, I think one of the most encouraging things really is the results of the Israeli elections November 1st, because there's been no more outspoken champion of the Iranian people than former and now newly inaugurated Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Caroline, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
We so value in Israel the support that we receive from evangelical Christians and Christians really worldwide for the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And I know that there's a lot of efforts by progressives to subvert the Christian evangelical community in colleges and other places. And so I think the most important thing is to keep educated, to keep up with what's happening, the true news in Israel, and to listen to people who can give you the proper information so that you don't lose the spark to understanding and to supporting the Jewish people and the Jewish state, because it really is. We are the lodestone of Judeo-Christian civilization, and you know what happens in Jerusalem ends up happening everywhere, for better or for worse. So let's all continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Caroline, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Hello and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Sam Grundwerg, World Chairman of Karen Hayesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. It was foretold that the children of Israel would return to their land on the wings of eagles. This is why it was so important for Karen Hayesod to support the establishment of Israel's first airline. I hope you enjoy, and God bless you from Jerusalem.
The divine promise of bringing the children of Israel to their land was given to Moses at the foot of Mount Sinai. I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me, as it is written in the book of Exodus, is a prophecy that has sparked the immigration for 3,000 years. And with the establishment of the Zionist movement and the State of Israel, it has begun to be fulfilled. Eagles made of steel of El Al Airlines have taken to the skies of the Holy Land, carrying with them hundreds of thousands of new immigrants to Israel. They have come from Yemen and Iraq, from North Africa and Ethiopia, from Russia and Ukraine. El Al, Israel's flagship carrier, was established with the support of the donors of Karen Hayesod, a global organization authorized by the Israeli government to raise funds for Israel's most important priority projects. Most urgent is the task of bringing Jews to Israel from countries of distress where they face danger. Just after Israel's establishment, nearly 50,000 Jews were brought to Israel from the ancient Yemenite Jewish community. In 1951 and 1952, more than 130,000 Jews from Iraq were brought home to safety in Israel. El Al Airlines was a key player in these airlifts and in waves of immigration since. Perhaps no one better epitomizes Israel's immigration story than Aryeh Oz. He was accepted into the pilot school of the Israel Air Force and earned his pilot's wings in 1956, and after completing his military service, joined El Al Airlines. He returned to the Air Force in 1991 to fly a jumbo jet taking Ethiopian Jews home to Israel in Operation Solomon.
We were about to evacuate 14,500 Ethiopian Jews from Addis Ababa to Tel Aviv. I flew a 747. We had 760 seats, and I sat on the floor between the seats. We had 1,087 souls on board. I said it's our obligation as the Jewish people to bring everybody to Israel. I felt so happy, that I took part in an operation like this. When we descended and came over Jerusalem, there was not one person in the cockpit who had no tears in his eyes.
For nearly 100 years, Karen Hayesod's vision has turned the dream of the return of the Jewish people to Israel into reality and remains at the center of efforts to sustain and develop a flourishing Jewish homeland in fulfillment of biblical prophecy.
Every time that when I made my walk around in order to see that the aircraft is serviceable, I always looked up and saw the Star of David and said to myself, gee, I'm flying El Al. This is El Al. This is Israel. This is the Jewish people.
Let's bless Israel together.
The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Bless Israel by supporting Karen Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible. To donate and get information, visit khisrael.org.
And now, Shining Light from Israel.
Hey folks, Yishai Fleischer here. I'm the international spokesman for the Jewish community of Hebron, and I'm about to take you to one of the most unique and important biblical shrines in the world. They call it the Tomb of the Patriarchs, but that's a mistake, because it's actually the Tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs. It's the mamas and the papas of the Jewish people, the founders of the biblical story. The whole essence of the book of Genesis happens right here. Let's go in together. So the Bible tells us in chapter 23 of the book of Genesis about the purchase that Abraham made where he was going to bury his beloved wife Sarah. Later, he was buried here, Abraham. After that, Isaac and Rebekah were buried in this sepulcher. And finally, Leah and Jacob, the first Israel. And that was about 4,000 years ago. So this is a 4,000-year-old site with a building that's 2,000 years old. And the Jewish people have been praying here all those years. King David prayed here. Everybody's always prayed here. But you know what? There was a time where it wasn't so simple. In the year 1267, the Muslim Mamluks came to town, and they told the Jews, get out of the building. Well, what do you mean get out of the building? Our parents are buried underneath this building, and this is a Jewish building built 2,000 years ago by a Jewish king. And there was a staircase here, and the staircase, they were only allowed up to the 7th step, and they weren't allowed any further. And Jews came here and prayed here in the cold and in the heat for 700 years. 700 years of tenacity, of saying we belong inside. These are our mothers and fathers. We'll never let go of their memory and their heritage until they were liberated and allowed to go back in. Still, Jews come and pray in this place because they remember the 700 years of prayers and tears that sanctified this holy place. Here at the Tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs, you have Sarah next to Abraham. Right from the get-go, it was all about these people coming together to give birth to a nation. So people come into this room, and what do? They have life cycle events. They have a bar or a bat mitzvah when a girl or a boy becomes of age, or they have a circumcision ceremony. And even I myself got married in this great space, and my wife sat here getting prepared for the wedding with Sarah, with Abraham, going into the wedding canopy. So towards the end of the book of Genesis, we learned that Jacob buries his wife Leah here at the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs, not Rachel. Rachel is buried at the tomb of Rachel in Bethlehem, which is about 20 kilometers north. And the reason for that is that Rachel died in childbirth in Bethlehem, and maybe Jacob was just too brokenhearted to bring her here. He just couldn't travel with her. Or maybe because we learn in the book of Jeremiah that Rachel refuses to be consoled. She continuously cries for her children. But this place is a place of consolation. It's where mothers and fathers are together. So here's Leah, and then you'd probably guess that across the way is, let's go over there and see, the patriarch Jacob. There he is, the patriarch Jacob. Now, Jacob was dying in Egypt, and he says to his children, don't bury me in Egypt. I don't want to be buried here. I want to go back to the place that Abraham purchased for full money, and he was buried there, and so was Sarah, and so was Isaac and Rebekah, and I buried Leah there, and I want to be buried in Hebron. And here he is, and here's another hall where we get that family feeling. Now, Jacob is not just Jacob, he's got another name. That's the name of Israel. That's the super name of the Jewish people. Jacob is like the mild-mannered reporter. When he tears off the shirt, it's Israel underneath. And so this place marks that Israel, that nation that has so many stories about it, so many issues throughout times, because this is a chosen nation, a special nation that God chose to bring God's light into the world. That's Israel. And the beginning of that are here at the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs. And people come here from all over the world to pray, to connect, to spill their heart, and to get strength to continue the chain of the matriarchs and patriarchs walking in the path of God. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed your tour of the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs here in beautiful and ancient Hebron. It is a very ancient place, and you've got to come visit it. You know, it's a bucket list dream to come to the land of Israel, and you're certainly going to go to Jerusalem, and you're certainly going to connect to the place where 2 temples existed, but don't forget to come visit us. The mothers and the fathers are waiting for you. Shalom.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan El-Rom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.